Hello and welcome to episode number 51 of the Board Game Barrage podcast. My name is Mark. With me are my co-hosts Kellen and Neelan.
Hello.
Hello.
Today on the show, we are going to be doing a quick review of the year 2018 in board games. We are going to focus on our biggest surprise and biggest disappointment of the year, specifically. And also, we're going to be talking, as we always do, about the games we've played last week. But before we get into all that, a couple quick things we want to touch on. We've started a Discord channel. It already has a couple of folks on there. The talk seems to be pretty vibrant, and we're getting some interesting chatting in there. You guys haven't spoken all episodes.
It's another avenue to make fun of Neelan.
At a constant basis, yeah.
People have been clamoring for that, so we've provided them another...
More channels to make fun of Neelan.
Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and our guild weren't enough. Come to the Discord.
Right, exactly.
As long as you're Team Red Tank.
And the link for that should be on our site at the time you hear this, so just look for the Discord link, and that should take you straight through to an invite.
And is there a link in the guild?
Yeah. Otherwise, you can go to the guild. There should be a thread there about it.
And also, we want to put another call out for reviews. It always helps us a great deal when we get reviews on wherever you download the show. So Apple Podcasts or wherever you get the show, go ahead and give us a review. It helps out a lot. We'll probably read reviews on the show.
Yeah, we haven't done that in a while. Let's read out a review.
Yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, let's get into it. Let's start with the games that we've been playing. So, what have you guys played this week?
I can jump in. I've been playing Akrotiri. This is a 2-player game by Z-Man Games. It's a very cool sort of medium weight. Premise is that you're all explorers in the Greek Isles, sort of trying to find and discover these temples. So you sort of start off with a little boat on the island of Thera, and you have to sort of sail around collecting resources which you need to sell back to Thera to like fund your expedition. And what's cool about it is that every turn you're sort of laying a tile down to expand the map. That creates like these sea channels between islands. So your turn is a balance of sort of going out to these new islands you've just placed, exploring them, collecting their resources, and then also buying these map cards. So the map card will sort of denote, okay, there's a temple that is either to the east of this sort of terrain type or to the south of this terrain type and to the west of this terrain type. And as you're laying out the map, you're sort of narrowing down, okay, this will be a possible spot for this temple, so I'm going to go there, pay the money, excavate it, get some points. You're trying to get, basically it's a race to get the temples as fast as possible, because once one player has built the last temple, then the game ends. Whoever has the most points wins. It's a very simple game. It's easy to teach. It theoretically plays in about an hour. Yeah. It took us slightly longer than that for the first game, but I'm sure it would go a lot quicker. But I really, really enjoyed this. So I played this with my girlfriend, who's not a very heavy board gamer. She loved it too. Yeah. So I think certainly, like, for whatever reason, I've seen a lot of people asking recently, hey, what are some good 2-player games, or what are games I can get to slowly move someone towards heavier games? This felt like a really strong medium weight game that she really liked, and I liked a whole lot too.
Yeah, I've played this before. I like it a great deal too. It has a lot of interesting and fun mechanisms. It's got like a little engine building with your own tableau.
Yeah. It's
got an action point system. It's got exploration. It's got like route building. Yeah, it's got a lot of good things in a small package, both size wise and in terms of like time necessary.
The other thing I liked about it is when we were like trying to find like a next game to play, like there are a lot of options in like the farming Euro,
right?
Collect resources, build buildings, type thing. And this is not one of those games. It feels pretty distinctly different from like an Agricola or like any other sort of Euro in that style. So yeah,
did you sleeve it already?
I haven't yet. She needs to be there when I sleeve it. So
not too many cards in this game, right?
No, I think it's like 20 or something. Yeah, there's map cards, goal cards, and that's about it. But
this was out of print for a while, and it was pretty hard to get.
Right.
But just seen a recent reprint with Z-Man, so it shouldn't be too hard to find.
Yeah, we were trying to figure out, because this is labeled as the revised edition. I don't know what was revised exactly. But
yeah, I was actually looking at it to see if I could figure out what the revision was. I couldn't, but it mentioned something in the rule book about if you have the older version, you can combine that with this one to have a 4-player game.
Yeah.
So it's obviously not that much different.
Yeah.
So
the other thing I want to mention is that the components are these like adorable like wooden pieces. We put a picture up on the Instagram. There's these cool boats that you put resources in. The temples are are adorable. It's just a cool little production. I like it a lot. That's Akrotiri.
Colin, what'd you play?
Well, Neelan abandoned us this weekend, in order to play this with his girlfriend, while Mark and I and Christina played Innovation, a much better game. You can reference our
Certainly not the best game of all time, though.
top 10 best games of all time to hear more about Innovation. But another game we got to play was Blue Moon City. Yep. This is a re-release of a Reiner Knizia classic that has been out of print. Cool Mini or Not has brought in a new edition of this game. It's a pretty unique game where you are trying to turn in victory points. Well, you're collecting gems, and you turn them in to help build this tower, and whoever contributes to the tower 5 times first wins the game. And what you're doing is you're moving around on this grid of a city, and you're turning in cards in order to help rebuild the city. So the tile right next to the middle might have 5 red, 4 red, and 3 red on it. And then you have to go there and contribute 3 value of red card, or 4 or 5, in order to do that contribution. And then once that building is complete, everyone who contributed gets part of the bonus. Either you're the majority, so you contributed the most, or you just get a bonus for having contributed at all. In addition to that, there's adjacency. So once adjacent buildings have been completed, if you complete a building that's adjacent to those, you also get an additional bonus. So you're constantly looking to move around the board, sort of combo off of different bonuses that are happening. There's also these 3 dragons that are moving around the board, which is a whole nother mini game you're kind of playing where you want to contribute to a building on top of a dragon because that helps you advance in the dragon game.
Right.
This was fun. I think I enjoyed it more than you did, Mark. Was that your sort of read?
Yes, I think that's accurate.
Were you playing this for the first time?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Yes, I was. Yeah, I liked the fact that, so a lot of these tiles that you're trying to flip over have 3 spots, and like you said, the person who does the majority of it gets the biggest bonus. But that also leads to sort of an interesting situation where if you want a tile to flip, if you contribute a lot initially, so you lock down the majority, you disincentivize a little bit other people to come and help you. So there's an interesting push and pull in that respect. I don't know. It didn't feel maybe as clean as other Knizia designs for me because there's a number of different cards, and each of the cards has like a different power, so it seems a little clunkier than a typical streamlined Knizia design. The card powers were interesting, so there was that about it. But yeah, I guess when I thought Knizia, I thought it'd be a smoother game, and it just seemed a little bit more reference the rule book, and that also the color scheme didn't help out because there's like there are brown cards and brown spots on the board, and there are gray and there are red, and those 3 are sort of difficult to distinguish. A couple times we had people who were like convinced they could play brown cards to a spot and it was actually a gray spot. Wow. So that also lent to the inelegance of it.
Yeah, and then the power of the blue cards was to move the blue dragon.
Right.
But the power of the red cards was to move the black dragon.
Green dragon.
Oh no, and then so there were 3 color dragons and only 1 color match to move that dragon.
Right.
That's weird.
Yeah.
It made no sense at all.
Yeah.
My favorite thing about it was that it incentivized being around other players. So Mark went off on one side and Christina and I were on another side of the board, and that we were sort of comboing off of each other, and Mark suffered just a little bit for not being near us.
For sure.
And I liked that interplay. I love any game with hand management. I love Reiner Knizia.
Yeah.
This feels like my ideal weight. It's just beyond filler, where sometimes when I'm playing a filler game, I feel like I'm wasting time, honestly.
Yeah.
And this is that perfect weight where I feel like I was playing a board game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I'm super excited to have Blue Moon City, excited to get it to the table again.
Any sense as to where this would stack up to other Knizia games to you?
I mean, it's certainly not as streamlined as Blue Lagoon or Through the Desert or Raw. I'd have to give it a few more plays.
Yeah.
I just enjoy how the powers, how much there is in it.
That's true. Yeah.
For still being under an hour-long game when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
And it's also not a race to score 30 victory points. It did feel like the end game felt just a little different to me.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe that's just a veneer, and I've been tricked by the doctor.
No, that's true because you do have an advantage to build early, to contribute early because it costs less.
Right.
So yeah,
that is Blue Moon City
That-
by
that-
Reiner Knizia.
That sounds cool. Like I feel like my experience with Knizia stuff is pretty limited, but the stuff I played of his I do really like, and especially the stuff that is in that sort of like middle weight feels really appealing to me. Like if you're saying it's comparable in weight and length to like a Blue Lagoon,
yeah.
then
Yeah, I would say it's correct.
that sounds like something I want to check out.
I just don't know if it has the same flavor of other
Sure.
games. Yeah,
I can see that,
but it's a well-designed game for sure.
Cool.
I played a 2-player game, which is rare for me this weekend. I played This Guilty Land. This is about the political side of the anti-slavery movement. So this is, again, a historical game, which is right up my alley. I've mentioned how much I like history games. So this is quite similar to Twilight Struggle, wherein it's a card-driven game, and when you play a card, you pay for the card, but your opponent gets the points that you spend. So in Twilight Struggle, there is an operation point value to a card. More valuable or stronger cards have more points. This is the same thing that happens in This Guilty Land. So what you're trying to do in This Guilty Land is there are two sides. There's oppression and there's, I think it's called freedom.
Where is this set?
This is the political side of the anti-slavery movement, the abolition movement.
Oh,
But in
okay.
the US.
In the U.S.
In the U.S., sorry, in
Sorry,
the
I'm
U.S.
like
Sorry.
global. Like,
Yeah, no,
what
I'm
are
sorry.
you
Yeah,
talking
in the
about?
U.S. In the U.S. So one person is oppression. That's the title of the faction. Other person is freedom. I was obviously freedom. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to swing the House and the Senate to allow you to enact the laws you want and just push your side to by the end, score the most. You're scoring victory points. There's ways to end the game if you control the entire House and the entire Senate, or there's a track where you can pass laws, and if you pass all your laws, that's another game end trigger. But it's like an area control game at its core. It's got a very interesting hand management side without a hand of cards. So what you do is both sides have what's called a organizational strength, and that is sort of thematically, how well structured your organization is, and that is basically your hand size. But instead of a hand of cards that you have in your hand, it's a hand of cards that you keep in reserve. And when you play them from the reserve, they have different powers. Anyway, the best part of this game, aside from the history, and again, this is another game where a lot of historical data and people are on the cards, and that's fun. But it's a Twilight Struggle type game that plays in about an hour.
Okay.
I was very impressed by how much meat there was to this game for such a short period of time. Anybody who's interested in Twilight Struggle and who is maybe intimidated by the length of that game, because that game can go a couple hours, and there's you're talking about the entire globe, and that can be intimidating. This is a much smaller setting and a much shorter game, and it just was great. It's by Hollandspiel, which is a small publisher, so it's a little bit harder to find, but they print all their games on demand, so they're never out of print. But I would strongly recommend This Guilty Land. It's a really interesting card-driven sort of war game. And, the factions are also interesting. The oppression side starts out strong because they've got both houses of the government on their side, but the course of freedom creeps in. Freedom is playing the long game. Oppression is trying to squash it right at the beginning. So that's interesting. It was an interesting give and take there.
Is this the same company that just made Meltwater? Is that
Yes,
the
it
name?
is. Yeah. Also 4X.
Because that struck me as, is it a fairly balanced game, or does it feel that way, or is it more like teaching you a lesson?
No, I would say this is a balanced game. I think like Phil Eklund is notorious for he will sacrifice a good game for a good lesson in his games. This is not that case. This game feels like it's balanced. It's hard to tell just having played it once, but it does feel like it's a balanced game. I mean, my opponent, the guy who was playing Oppression, he was scoring a lot. He was scoring early, and I thought there was no way I would catch up. But, the tide swung, and I was able to score at the end, and it felt like it could have gone either way. Freedom won, of course. So
how strongly does the theme come through? Because I'm reminded of playing something like Freedom, the Underground Railroad,
right,
which has a slavery theme, and that was a heavy game just by virtue of the theme.
Right.
How strongly did you feel like that slavery theme was really?
Well, so the thing is, it's not as visceral as that, because in Freedom, the Underground Railroad, you have cubes that represent slaves,
Like actual,
and you have slave
yeah,
catchers, and
totally.
it's like that's a really powerful
It's a tough thing,
Here,
yeah.
you're in the Senate and the House. You're trying
Okay,
to
so it's a
swing
little
things.
bit more abstracted.
I don't know if I would say abstracted. It's just less visceral because you're talking about passing laws, and you're talking about there's a classification card called violence cards. That can come up, and that can evoke stuff like that. So I don't know if it's abstracted. I still think it's grounded in the theme.
Got it.
But just inherently, because you're not talking about the people who are suffering, you're talking about the people who are working in government to
Sure.
affect things. So the theme comes out strongly, but it's not as like visceral in that respect.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
I guess you didn't play Oppression, but I just know people balk at games where you're being too warlike,
Right.
where all you're doing is killing other people. A game where you're playing to keep slavery
Yeah.
going.
Right.
It sounds like a tough
Seems-
sell to be that side.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't shy away from that. It's
Yeah.
called oppression, but I feel like if they soften that, it might come off as
Yeah, it doesn't make light of
diluting
it.
it doesn't make sense
Right.
either.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's intriguing.
Yeah, it's really a really good game. There's something, I don't know, I feel there's something like beautiful about it. Just the simplicity of it, the theme, there's everything sort of ties together really well. And for it just to be a 45-minute, 60-minute game was great. So I would highly recommend This Guilty Land.
I'm just imagining the game banter, because even in
Right.
a war game, it's like, I kill you here, bro.
Right.
And in this one,
Yeah,
there's no banter.
I pass anti-federalism law, bro.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
tough. Interesting.
Yeah. So now let's move on to our feature topic, which is a little bit of a 2018 year in review. Let's talk about our most disappointing game of the year, or our most disappointing topic. I guess it doesn't have to be a game. Kellen, what's your most disappointing bit of 2018 in the board game world?
So I wanted to start us off with something that we could all agree on together.
Okay. Seems doubtful.
My biggest disappointment of 2018 is actually in the frame right now. That is Nealon. That is Rising Sun.
That is insane.
That is insane.
Rising Sun is the spiritual successor to Blood Rage.
Diplomacy, you mean?
You're getting ahead of yourself here, Mark. So Blood Rage and Rising Sun are both great games. So let's start with that.
Okay.
Disappointment. Let's define disappointment.
Okay.
I didn't Webster's Dictionary it, but
Yeah.
we can assume that a disappointment is something that you had an expectation for,
Sure.
and that expectation was not met.
Yeah.
Rising Sun as a game was sold to me as Blood Rage as the core, plus a Japanese theme, plus a grounding in diplomacy.
Yeah.
You've never played. Why are you
No,
telling?
I mean, no, but it's clear that that's not present in Rising Sun.
But that is
Like-
how it was sold. It was
yeah,
sold
no,
as
no, yeah, absolutely.
So Rising Sun feels similar to Blood Rage in many ways. It has super cool art and minis and has this cool Japanese theme. The map of Japan's not great at an accurate Japan, but that's okay. We can forgive it. But it has nothing to do with diplomacy or alliances in general, in my opinion. One of the key features of Rising Sun is this alliance. Is it a phase? Alliance phase? Or alliance
the tea
system?
There's an
ceremony,
alliance, part every year.
You are selecting actions, and then your partner also gets to do that action with you. So that sounds like the making of a great alliance system. But what ends up happening is that every player, in a 4-player game, both players ally with the person who wants to do similar actions to them. If you're trying to get troops on the board, it's apparent which other player also would be trying to get troops on the board. If you're playing in a 5-player game, one player is going to be left out of that alliance. They have a special action available to them that doesn't hurt them compared to other players. But it doesn't feel like wheeling and dealing and cajoling. Is that how you say that word?
Yeah,
Cajoling? It just feels like a rote mechanic in the game. Diplomacy is on my top 10 board games of all time list, and there's just almost nothing shared with Rising Sun.
I think that everything you're saying is 100% true, and I think a large part of the difference between your perception and my perception of Rising Sun is having no prior affinity or knowledge, really, of diplomacy. Like, when I saw that as listed on the Kickstarter promotion, it's like, oh yeah, diplomacy, I've heard a good game. If this has elements of that's cool. It doesn't. Like, all the negotiation, I think we'll all agree, is very undercooked in Rising Sun.
Yeah.
The alliance phase especially, it's just, it's easy to see who to ally with. There's very rarely any benefit, as far as I can tell, of not allying with someone. And that whole system, sort of, the idea of that being a negotiation or like anything like diplomacy related at all, is entirely out the window. I agree. I can see why that would make the game pretty disappointing to you.
I think, we all have these things that we're looking forward to that's upcoming in the calendar, Gen Con, these big, for me, releases, Cthulhu Wars, a new expansion coming out, that's been delayed for so long, and it continually disappoints me.
Right.
Something about Rising Sun was my most hyped, perhaps, board game ever.
I remember how hyped you were about it. Yeah,
and
for the reason you stated, it just seemed like it checked all the boxes for you. Yeah.
And so I went all in. I've since sold my copy of Rising Sun. I think that's in part because Neelan has it. I may have held on to mine if Neelan did not have it, but Rising Sun was my biggest board gaming disappointment of the year 2018.
Okay, sure. I mean, I'm going to disagree. It was my favorite game of 2018.
Disagree.
Well, no, I would. Yes,
here's Neelan disagreeing.
I disagree that you were
opinion.
Disappointed. No. I
you
disagree
just did.
with your stance on Rising Sun. Like,
sure,
it was my favorite game of 2018, but I can see how
he doesn't like people, folks.
Yeah, exactly. Any focus on people, like, that wasn't important to me at all.
You?
Yeah, my
I disagree.
Fair.
Preemptively. Good.
My most disappointing, mine is a game as well. It is, again, in fact, there's a common theme with both my best surprise and disappointment. They're both Kickstarter stories. Seventh Continent got a lot of hype pre-release. It had already had a release on Kickstarter, I believe, prior. Everyone seemed to be raving about it. This very narrative-focused game that was sort of choose your own adventure, explore a map, uncover this cool story. I played through the starting quest of Seventh Continent a couple of times. I liked my first taste of it. Going back to the thing to sort of correct the mistakes you did wrong the first time was appealing. Got all the way to close to the end, realized that I had missed crucial things way back in the beginning, and this is now, having played this first mission for like 3 or 4 hours, the thought of going back and doing it all again, I would never do that. It just completely... Everything about the appeal of it sort of just dissolved after the end of that first mission. Just like the idea of that I had just arbitrarily missed story beats along the way, and that was the reason I had failed, was hugely disappointing to me. And on top of that, I don't think the story was that good. Okay. Like, I don't think the writing is of a decent enough quality.
But
like,
Frankenstein's in it.
Well, that's the thing. Is like, one of the things that we sort of like lamented all along, what at least you did, was how good can it be if they're just literally using stock characters from arbitrary stories? And it's absolutely valid. It feels
Willy Wonka's in there somewhere.
Right. It feels hobbled together from just like tropes from sort of other similar styles of stories. There's nothing in there that felt like a unique, inventive piece of fiction. I don't know, man. Like, I just didn't.
So I haven't played this, and I know generally how the game plays, but your specific gripe in terms of going back and finding pieces that you might have missed, is that have to do with like you're trying to be a completionist about it, or
no?
This is required.
No, I got to the end. We got to the end rather, and we were told, hey, you're missing pieces in order to be able to finish this.
Okay.
And you have limited time in that game because it has like a survival element where you're required to get food and stuff.
Right.
So there was no way conceivably I could have trekked back across the island. Like,
right.
We exploited all the resources available to us. And nothing about even doing that seemed appealing. Like the idea of, it kind of reminds me of a video game where you're required to backtrack for like hours in order to like get like an item you need or grind for thing. It's just nothing about that was appealing in a game that takes substantially longer to execute on than any video game.
Reminds me of Time Stories.
Yeah,
a little bit where you totally reset.
And I think that's a good point, actually. That reminds me a lot of my experience playing Time Stories, and I think our experience with Time Stories differs pretty heavily from yours, Mark.
Yeah.
You quite liked it.
I did, although I haven't gone back to it in a while, so time will tell if it sticks, but yeah.
Similar thing, like it just the strength of the narrative wasn't enough for me to want to replay it.
Right.
Yeah, that's Seventh Continent, unfortunately. And the sad thing is I still have wave 2 of this coming, so I have a lot of Seventh Continents on the way.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I still admire the system.
Sure.
I think the way that they sort of designed the mechanics of the game is quite clever, but nothing about the actual execution felt worth doing to me.
And the what you've got is an expansion. It's just more on the. Or
I believe
it's not like a re-implementation. Or
no, it's an
revision.
expansion
Yeah.
coming. Oh, you mean what I have right now?
Or what you have coming.
What I have coming is the expansion.
Okay, so
and
just
a couple
more
of
of the same.
extras. Yeah, more of the same.
So you can't even start it until you finish wave 1?
Actually, no, I don't think so. I believe I could. I think you could just go straight into that if you want to. I don't think it's like a sequel. It doesn't follow on from wave 1 in any way.
My prediction is you will never open wave 2.
I think that's likely. I'm planning on probably just selling it as soon as it arrives, to be quite honest.
Good prediction.
We can just pencil this in for biggest game disappointment of 2019.
Right, when
The
that comes.
$100 you spent on
Yeah.
wave 2.
Probably
And
make
that-
money on
That's
it.
the other thing. It's a crazy expensive game as
Yeah.
well. To have gone like to the extent that I did to get it, it's very sad.
Disappointment.
Yep.
My disappointment is another game. This is a Stefan Feld game.
Uh-oh.
Merlin. I just played Merlin. This was co-designed by Stefan Feld, and I forget the name of the designer, but he's the person who did Pillars of the Earth. This is a new Feld big box game. It was really hyped, and I think it is. And I love Stefan Feld games. I'm a big fan of Feld games. This is probably the game I like the least.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Of all
the
games?
least of every game?
No, of the Feld games. Of the
Okay.
Feld games.
I thought you meant like of every
No,
game.
no.
That's
big
a
disappointment.
bold
No,
statement.
No, this is not 634 or whatever. No, this is this. I think this is my least liked Feld game. So I would love to see Kellen play this game because I think that would be just like torturous. I wonder because this is like the most point salad game, and I like a point salad, but this is like point salad to like arisen to like level 10. Every action in this game is like 1 point, 2 point, 3 points or something. There's ways to get more, but the primary gripe I have is that, so like some of his other games, you roll dice and the dice basically dictate the actions you can do. And it's got a rondelle, so based on the way you roll it, or the numbers you roll on the dice, that indicates how many moves you can move your guy around the rondelle. And wherever he lands, that's the action he can take. So my biggest gripe is that, unlike other Feld games, there is very, very little opportunity to mitigate your rolls. There is one resource you can get that will make your dice turn into anything you want, and there are a couple other spaces where you can have the dice flip. But for the most part, for about 90% of your rolls, whatever you roll is what you're going to get. Yeah,
That sucks.
and furthermore, there's one character, Merlin, who is another piece on the board who moves around the rondelle, and the Merlin piece is shared by everybody, and he can move, clockwise or counterclockwise. So there's some strategy or some thought about which way I want to move him, because, if I move him now, then Kellen might move him and he might be out of range or whatever. But your characters only move, except if you activate a power, only move in one direction. So there's not even, like, if you roll a 1, 3, 6, your guy is going to only move one direction. He's only going to move 1, 3, and 6. So the only strategy when it comes to the rolling is, am I going to go the 1 first, then the 3, then the 6, or the 6? I mean, there is something there because obviously it's going to dictate if you're going to land in like spot 6, 7, and 10. But it's just, there were a lot of turns in that game where me and the other players on the table, because we spoke about this, felt like we just had a suboptimal action. Like, we were just stuck. We were stuck with a roll. I mean, it helped cut down on AP because whatever you roll, you're going to do. But it didn't seem like, it seemed like the choices were gutted. It seemed like there weren't very many choices to make. And again, the point salad-ness of this game was just extreme. And there's no engine. You don't build any engine in this game. You're scoring points in the same manner at the beginning of the game as you do at the end. There's a little bit of there's a little bit of engine building in terms of board presence, and that you'll score more points based on hitting certain things that will trigger scoring. But it's just very, very light. You don't feel like you're getting stronger and stronger. And with a point salad, you at least sometimes feel like those points are multiplying. Like at the end, you place something or you roll dice, and then you score 20 points.
Sure.
Here it's at the end. It was just like still like mostly 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 4. All the numbers were incremental. I was just really disappointed by how bland this game was. I mean, the board is really nice. The theme is cool. Merlin round table. It's
he's running around.
Yeah, exactly. Like Rondell, like he did in the books. Yeah,
That's thematic.
That is thematic. But just an egg. I actually was so disappointed that the first thing I did as I was leaving the game night was go on Board Game Geek and like see the positive reviews to see like how these people could actually think because this game was really hard to find. People were paying like $100 to get it like shipped from overseas. They initially said it wasn't going to be released in the U.S., so it was really, really hard to find. It felt like this like gem, but it just felt totally flat. So yeah, for me, Merlin is my biggest disappointment of 2018.
I think I could be paid to live stream this.
I would love, because it has some things though that I think you know, because I feel like one of your complaints with fellow games is like the mitigation, like you're never stuck.
Yeah, I do. I like what you said about you basically having three choices, or sort of how the dice. I actually like that.
Right.
For example, in Oracle of Delphi, how you essentially can turn any die into another die.
Yeah, you have a lot of
if you're willing
avenues.
to pay for it. I actually don't like.
Right.
But the way it works in Delphi, it's just like it's a limited resource, so you have to find the right times to mitigate.
Right, but it basically means you have unlimited options.
Right. Yes, you're right.
If you've accumulated that resource.
Yeah.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what But every turn you still
Every
have to
turn,
calculate it.
yeah, and every
When
turn
is it worth doing?
Right.
It's similar. It's actually, now that I think about it, kind of similar to loan mechanisms, which is when is it worth it to go into debt to do this thing? And I just don't like having to consider that.
Yeah. So I thought that
Generally.
I thought that might be interesting, but in this game, I thought it led to like a lot of dead turns, a lot of like boring, where you felt like, hey, obviously I'm going to take 4, then 3, then 2. Like it just like felt like very clear.
Do you want your game to feel like every turn you made the most optimal decision that you could?
No, not necessarily. I mean, that's a deeper question, but I don't mind taking suboptimal moves. I just felt like I want my game to always offer me a choice, or like just put me in an interesting mind space where I've got something to consider. Here, the considerations felt pretty low. You know, there wasn't very much thinking that I felt like I was doing. It just felt like bland, sort of. So yeah, that is Merlin, my biggest disappointment of 2018. Now let's move on to the brighter side, unless you want to still wallow in the mud.
Well, I was just going to be like, of course, it was a failed...
Right.
Some kind of disappointment, failed...
The people at home have already made the joke that you were going to... I mean, they've assumed that you were going to make a failed joke, so not necessary. At this point, your reputation has preceded you, so...
That was rude.
No, okay, so let's go to the brighter side. Let's talk about our biggest surprise. I guess a surprise is not necessarily positive, but it's certainly not a disappointment. So,
but in this case, we're framing it as like a positive. Right?
Yeah, sure. I'll start this time. Let's go back. Let's do a snake draft.
Yeah.
For me,
because we weren't tired of you talking.
Well, for me, my biggest surprise, and it's a game. It wouldn't be, I don't think, one of my top 10 games of 2018. Maybe it would be. Maybe just right there at the end. But for me, it's the style of game that's the biggest surprise. So one of the games that is very popular that I don't like at all is Machikoro. I can't stand Machikoro. So this game is basically has the same mechanisms as Machikoro. This is space-based, but I love playing space-based. I'll play space-based whenever it's offered, and I just didn't think that after the sour taste that Machikoro left in my mouth after playing it, that I'd like a roll of dice and take actions based on your dice or based on other players' dice. But this does it in a really fun way. I felt like Machikoro, the game's dragged on too long. You weren't really that interested in other people's dice rolls very much. With space-based, you're really building, and this is like an engine builder. You're really building a big engine. You're always interested in what you're rolling, what other people are rolling, and it just makes for a really, really fun game. Yeah, I mean, there's not too much more to say. I'd say if you were put off by Machikoro, or I guess if you like Machikoro, try space-based out. It'll either change your opinion on what Machikoro was, or if you like Machikoro, it's probably a better version, I think.
I still don't love space-based, but honestly, like even if, like you said at the outset, like the idea of, hey, this is Machikoro, but with some slight tweaks, was never going to be super appealing to me. But I was still surprised by how much more I liked space-based.
Yeah, I almost didn't play this game my first time because
it was described as Machikoro.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. What was your gripe with space-based generally, or is it just not?
It still just didn't really super speak to me as a game I would want to. I like I said, I like it a lot. I just wouldn't be like angling to play it.
Same here. Like I said, it's probably my 9th, 10th, 11th best game of the year, but it surprised me that I actually would like it at all.
Right.
It sings to me.
Does it really?
Yeah, I like space-based.
Okay.
I like saying space-based.
Yeah, and you like saying things sing to you, I think.
Well, because it was talking to Neelan, but it sings to
me.
I
see.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
That's the difference.
Got it.
My biggest surprise of 2018 came at the very beginning of 2018 when a designer reached out to us on Instagram and asked if we wanted to take a look at their new word game, and this is Decrypto. Decrypto has become quite popular this year. I think Shut Up and Sit Down were big evangelists of it, as were we. But Decrypto is a word game in the vein of Codenames, but quite a bit more complicated, I would say. And what makes it so interesting is that everyone on your team knows the words that you are trying to help your team guess, and it's just the order of those words that is actually important. So if you're the clue giver, you're trying to get your side to guess 4-1-2, but they know that the 4 is fire and the 2 is bird. They don't know what order, what code you have drawn. So the game forces you to think in a way that is different than any other word game that I have played to this point, which is every time you're giving subsequent clues, you are trying not to have those clues relate to prior clues for that word, because the other team can snatch the codes from you and make a guess. So if you've given good clues for the word bird, like fly or air or wing, once they start seeing all of those words together, fly, air, wing, they probably know it's a bird.
Right.
So you're having to come up with clues that are similar to, but different enough. So, you might say airplane,
right,
or things that are so clearly not the word. Decrypto is shockingly simple and I know I just described it as complex, but it's shockingly simple for the decision space and the thinking that it allows you to do. This is definitely one of our favorite games of 2018.
Yeah.
And one of those ones that you start reading, you start looking at it, and it can't be that good.
Yeah.
But it is that good.
Yeah.
It's a very good word game.
Again, I've said this on the show a couple times, but I just love how clever it is that it's a game where you're trying to get your team to guess words, but from the outset, and it's only 4 words, and from the outset, the words are there. It's I just love that. It's so simple, but it's great. It's great.
It's a game that surprisingly speaks to its theme of like sending coded information,
Yes.
like more so than most games. Like Codenames, like the theme is entirely pasted on, but Decrypto, you feel like you're sending codes and breaking codes.
Yeah,
and
right. You're listening in. You're trying to figure out.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
It's super smart. It rewards creative thinking in a way that Codenames does as well, but in, like you said, a much more gamery, a much more thinky, much harder puzzle. It's really good.
Yeah.
It's edging up on like Codenames as my favorite word game for sure. It's certainly one of my favorite games of 2018.
I agree.
My biggest surprise is both a game and sort of slightly broader. We'll get there in a second, but the game in particular is Lords of Hellas. This was a Kickstarter that I was initially quite excited about. Cool looking minis, cool theme, good art. A dudes on the map game that sort of also had like a questing element to it. But as the campaign progressed, this creeping doubt started to settle in where...
I think I helped with that.
Yeah, Kellen definitely didn't help. I'm sorry, Kellen definitely did help. We started to both think it was going to be a complete trash hot mess.
There's so many Kickstarters that look like this.
Sure, yeah.
It's the minis are the focus.
Yeah.
You don't really see much of the gameplay. You're intrigued by it, and then you just start seeing people comment about how they're going to paint all the minis. And I'm just like, Neelan, you're making a huge mistake.
Yeah, there was sort of a rabid fandom to this. Like when it was still in the Kickstarter phase, it just lit up all these like warning signs in my brain. It's like, this can't possibly actually live up to it. At this point, the publisher Awaken Realms, I think, had only done This War Is Mine. I'm not sure if that's true, but they were also just on the verge of releasing Dawnfall: The Edge or something like that, and that game was also kind of maybe shaking out to be kind of just a lot more just like rabid creep of like minis and features, and every week they would announce a new thing that was going into it, and again couldn't possibly live up to it. That game came out, was apparently pretty good, and then Lords of Hellas came out, and people seem to love it. Like our first game was hugely successful.
Yeah, I would
love to like keep going back to this and try it some more. But yeah, it was definitely, given the contrast between how bad I thought it was going to end up, I was almost just like dreading it. We have to get this, and I guess we have to play it.
Right.
And it turned out great.
Yeah, I agree.
And broader than that, Awaken Realms seem to be shaping up to be nailing this whole Kickstarter thing. Nemesis has just come out. It's apparently really, really, really good. We're looking forward to playing that really soon. They're killing it right now. Tainted Grail has obviously been a massive success for them. People seem to like that too in
biggest
previews.
board game on Kickstarter of all time.
It's funny because the skepticism with which some consumers have for Cool Mini or not, because I've definitely seen it on a lot of their Kickstarters.
Sure.
Oh, all they care about is plastic and money and miniatures. I feel that way towards, what is the name of this company?
Awaken Realms.
Oh, yeah, because even their name is
Right. It's so generic.
yeah, we could add a colon and
Yeah,
add,
exactly.
Yeah.
And yet I've played Lords of Hellas and I've been reading about Nemesis. I'm excited to try it.
Yeah.
But at the back of my head, it's still like lingering, like that these games aren't actually good.
And that's the weird
Which is
thing.
dumb.
I
That's
can't shake that as well, because every time I see one of their campaigns, it just starts over again. It's like, you've got so much stuff in here. How can you possibly work this out to be good?
Right.
But they're delivering repeatedly. So yeah, that's my best surprise of 2018. Lords of Hellas and the Rise of Awakened Realms.
Right. They've awakened.
Yeah.
You might say.
Exactly.
Get it, Kellen?
I didn't.
Okay, I'll explain it to you after the show. And speaking of the show, that's going to do it for our show. Episode number 51 in the books.
Quick and breezy.
Quick and breezy and easy. That's what you get when I'm hosting. Right?
I
We're-
think they have a favorite host.
Yeah,
probably.
no, they do. Right, exactly. And they all know it's green. So that's going to do it for the show. As always, you can find us on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. If there is a avenue of social media, we probably have a presence. And also, Discord.
Check
Join
out
the Discord
Discord
channel. You can chat with us 24 hours a day. We are always manning the Discord, right?
Yeah.
We take it in shifts, 8-hour shifts.
Yeah.
Manning the Discord?
Yeah, you do the graveyard shift. I do the...
Yeah. There will always be someone. That's
yeah,
not true.
that is not true at all.
But genuinely, I mean, we're there, we're hanging out. Like, it's not designed as a platform to address us necessarily directly,
Right.
but there's a good community there that's talking about
It's been
board
really
games
fun.
all the time.
It's been
And
super
we're hanging
fun,
out
for sure.
there answering questions. So,
Yeah, exactly. You can reach us. Obviously, our website is boardgamebarrage.com. You can find our guild at boardgamebarrage.com/guild.
Yes.
Okay, I forget the slash direction. And I think that just about does it. Reviews, please. As we said earlier, wherever you find us, please put a review up, and we'll read your reviews on the next show. And as always, thank you to Heart Society for our intro and outro song, What's on Your Mind, Kid? You can find them at heartsocietymusic.com. That's going to do it. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I can't believe we started 2019 with this.
Okay, ready to go? You're not ready to go. Look, you shifting around.
Well, the problem is my shirt is not
Why did you wear
designed
it?
to sit on a couch. Well, because I wore it to work. Like normal people go to work so I can live in a home, Mark. Do you understand?
I don't understand. I'm
Yeah, I
unclear
know
about
you
this
don't
concept
understand.
of
We don't-
home living.
We don't dumpster dive and find games and then trade them to grandmas in exchange for money.
If only my life was that, I would be a happier man. Okay, here we go.
I believe that.
You ready? Shifty? You're not giving me any... Okay, here we go.
I'm looking right at you.
Okay.